So thank you. And yeah, now we are coming to our speaker, Andrés Saravia. He's a research associate at the WZB in Berlin at the Social Science Center and works for RatSWD, in English, German Data Forum there. And we know each other from the work at the consortium ConsortSWD. And the consortium is for social, behavioral, and educational and economic sciences, and is part of the NFDI. And I invited him especially because he's responsible for the project CrisesData, and I don't want to tell too much about it, but I think this project is a great example for interdisciplinary research, or can be used for it, with the perspective from social, behavioral, and economic science. So thanks that you're here. I'm really looking forward to your presentation. And yes, so the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Katja, for this nice introduction. I will share my presentation as well. And yeah, first of all, maybe just to make also the expectations a bit clearer, I would like to say a few words about myself as well. So I'm not a data expert, and I'm not currently a researcher in the classical sense either. Maybe just that you know that. So I have a rather coordinating position right now in the interface between social science research, data production and data management, as well as politics and administration. So yeah, excuse me in advance if I cannot get into too much technical details regarding data. But however, I hope that I can give you some insights on our project today. So let's dive into the topic of today, crisis data. As we all know, we are living in times of crises that affect the society in Germany. Most prominent, maybe in the last years, has been the COVID-19 pandemic, which affected beginning in 2020 large parts of society, of course, including public health, but also education, economics, or social cohesion questions. And yeah, it's likely that in the future we will have more epidemics, pandemics, or health crises to come. A second type of crisis are natural hazards or extreme weather events, such as floods, storms, droughts and heat waves, or wildfires. And yeah, here we can see the picture of the Ahrtal floods in 2021. And here as well with the ongoing climate change, the possibility of these natural hazards is rising in the future. A third type of crisis is a potential state of tension or state of defense. Yeah, after the Russian invasion in Ukraine, a war in Europe is happening right now, and we cannot exclude anymore a possible scenario that Germany or maybe a NATO partner is being attacked in the next years. And that would also lead to the situation that Germany maybe become a logistics hub where hundreds of thousands of allied troops have to transit, be supplied and protected on the route to the NATO's eastern flank. And that, of course, would also have large effects on German population and infrastructure. So yeah, we have these multiple overlapping crises that affect society. And of course, in order to get evidence-based policy decisions and measures, there's a need for information on society and on the population. And this requires empirical data from social sciences and additional sources. So during the coronavirus pandemic, we have some lessons learned. There in this situation, social science have reacted quite quickly to the corresponding need for research and in particular also data. There were a lot of so-called ad hoc surveys conducted in these times that treated some issues in certain areas which were very particular for this crisis. For example, there were a lot of surveys regarding home office in the coronavirus pandemic. But however, this short-term reaction or push strategy, as we name it, also has some problems. So there have been some quality limitations in data collection due to the not use of standardized surveys instruments. There has also been a lack of coordination between these different surveys, and the result of that was sometimes delayed findings that cannot be used anymore for policy measures. And the general insight of this times is that social science has done quite little research on risk situations, on coping strategies, on behaviors, also on the mental and physical constitutions of the population with regard to crisis and disasters. So with the project or with these against this background, we wanted to change the focus towards vulnerability, preparedness, and resilience of the entire population, or also of individual population groups or social and institutional structures in threat and crisis situations. And these contents should be included more in longitudinal surveys that already exist. Another issue that is important to us is the possibility of linking the survey data with other data from other disciplines. So here we have this interdisciplinary aspect of the project as well covered. So what is needed from our point of view is a forward-looking data collection and data-related enhancement of the empirical social sciences. Especially when you look towards situations of social crisis. So the shift from a short-term reaction push strategy towards a long-term foresight pull strategy. That's where the project is going inside. So it started in December 2023 and has a funding period towards December 27 right now. It is located at the FU Berlin and the WZB Berlin Social Science Center. And from the very beginning, the project was accompanied by a working group of the German Data Forum from different social science disciplines. And in addition, also by a group of external experts from different institutions that you can see here, as well from research institutions such as the Disaster Research Center, but also from agencies from the practical civil protection, such as the BBK, and also some institutions which are in the interface between research and practical work, such as the Bundeswehr Center of Military History and Social Sciences. So the objectives of the program projects are to facilitate the access of crisis-related data from different scientific disciplines and also non-academic contexts. This includes also, as I just said, linking of different data with each other. Secondly, we want to include crisis and disaster-related content in long-term surveys, and we want to establish some structures and networks in order to coordinate researchers, practitioners, and decision makers in immediate crisis and disaster situations. For that, we are working on different work packages that I'm going to present in a bit in more detail. So we have developed an online information platform on data relevant to crisis and disasters. We conducted an analysis of long-term surveys and in order to develop a question module on disaster preparedness, which then should be included in a major survey. And in addition, we organize some network meetings to bring stakeholders together. And we want to establish our coordination center for rapid responses in societal crisis. So let's start with our information platform. It's called a website, which is called CrisesData.de. You can check it out maybe afterwards. And this platform provides information, firstly, on survey data, which is relevant to crisis and disasters. So that's from the social sciences. Secondly, on contextual that can be used to enrich this georeferenced survey data. Here we're talking about, for example, environmental and climate data that could also include information on natural hazards, for example. Then we have data on social and economic infrastructure, maybe the location of hospitals or schools. Yeah, we want to include health and epidemiological data, administrative and register data, data on civil protection, and also crime statistic and maybe accident and insurance data with, yeah, on this information platform. And finally, we have a section on survey instruments, which are relevant to crisis and disasters. Yeah, the information platform was launched in March 2025. The main target group or user group should be researchers from different disciplines who have an interest in researching societal crisis from a social, behavioral, or economic science perspective. And a secondary target group are practitioners in the fields of civil protection or crisis management. That could be representatives of administration, but also of help and emergency organizations who are interested also in data on crisis and disasters. So what is the content of the information platform? The main part is our collection of resources, which includes 3 different types of resources: information pages, data records, and survey instruments. And in addition, we have some guidance notes that includes handouts, practical handouts, and also some selected literature on crisis-related topics. And we want also provide a constant monitoring of new developments regarding crisis data. So the main part, as I just said, is the collection of resources. Here we have entries on particular resources that we have selected for this collection. The first type are information pages. That means websites with data repositories, other information portals, collections and overviews, but also relevant institutions and actors, as well as dashboards, digital maps, and information on research projects that are going on currently. Then as a second type, we have data records. That means data sets from social science survey studies or other individual social science data that contain findings about population, companies, and society relevant to crises. And as a third type, we collect survey instruments. That means questions, question modules that are established and already have been tested in different surveys, and that researchers can directly apply and use in their own population surveys and integrate in their questionnaires directly. Each entry of the collection of resources labeled with various filters and information that users can apply. Also to conduct specific searches, for example, the year of publication, the year of data collection, or they can also filter along specific types of crisis. Yeah, maybe I would like to show you just a few in a few minutes our website. Hope you can see it. Here we have CrisesData.de, and we have here the collection of resources. For now, it's only in German so far because we focus on the German-speaking area. And then you can see, for example, here we have the 3 types: information pages, data sets, and survey instruments. And here we have the different filters that you can apply. For example, data types, the year of publication or data collection, the mode of data collection, or also, for example, type of crisis or the accessibility of the data set. And then if you click on a single entry, you have some additional description and information on it. And then you have the link towards the data set, an external link. And then you can find, for example, here of this Eurobarometer data sets on disaster risk awareness and preparedness of the EU population, directly the corresponding data files. Okay, yeah, that's maybe a little insight into our collection of resources. So there will be always references to existing data. It's always important to clarify that our collection is neither a separate data repository nor a literature database. It only provides links to external sources. And as I just said, it covers only German-speaking countries. That means each research should relate to Germany, Austria, Switzerland, or regions and cities in these countries. But also we include international and European projects or comparative studies if they cover a German-speaking country, such as this EU barometer example. And yeah, we have different channels for adding a resource. So we especially the first entries were based on the input that we got from our expert discussions and exchanges that were conducted in the realm of the project. Then we used references from other websites or from the literature along a snowball principle a little bit. So that was another channel. And we also conducted targeted research for projects of known individual institutions or funding programs that we knew about. And the fourth channel for adding a resource, and I hope really that in the future that will be the most common one, is a contribution by external parties. So if you know from of a project or of a data set that could fit into our website, onto our websites, you can always contact us and we will send you a formula where you can put in some basic informations and then we put a new entry on our website. So we want to do a focus on quality, user perspective, and usability. The online information platform will be continuously expanded in the future, but also heavily relies on the participation of the community, as I just said. Yeah, in the next weeks, we want to evaluate the platform. We want to conduct some expert interviews with different user groups. And based on these insights, we want to modify and improve the whole platform. And maybe one last sentence. Yeah, as you maybe also saw or have noticed, the whole information platform is rather a pilot project. That's yeah, the entries are so far made manually by mainly myself, but I think it could be like give some ideas that could be consolidated and maybe also transformed into a more automatized version of such a website in the future. Okay, let's come to our second bigger working package, that is the inclusion of crisis and disaster-related content in long-term surveys. So what did we do here? First, we identified some topics or areas which are relevant for crisis and disasters from both a social science perspective, but also from a practitioner's perspective, for example, from the BBK. And after having identified these topics, we did an analysis of different long-term surveys that exist already in Germany and scanned these surveys regarding crisis and disaster-related content. And so we could detect some gaps and thereby some needs for information that is needed on the population or regarding also companies and social groups in the context of crisis and disasters. And yeah, out of this identification of the biggest needs, we developed additional modules that then can be used and placed in some selected surveys. yeah, if you want to know more about this whole process, you can read it in our paper that we published in May of this year. So it's brand new, and there, yeah, we show a bit this analysis and the main insights of how to include crisis and disaster related content in long-term surveys. Yeah, however, I want to share some of these insights also with you right now. So here we have some topics that have been identified as relevant for crisis and disasters related content. So, for example, we have risk perception. If the people have already had some experiences before with crisis and disasters, we have more general information such as trust in institutions or voluntary or social commitment, information on communication behavior, but also some indicators on vulnerability are important, which different vulnerable groups are affected by a crisis, especially, and also some indicators for individual or community resilience are important, as well as emergency preparedness. So yeah, these topics were identified based on expert interviews, workshop, and exchange meetings that we conducted in the project. And yeah, one has to add also that depending on the different threat scenario or on the particular crisis, these topics have different levels of relevance and urgency. And particularly in view of crises that are yet unknown, that are coming in the future, there could also be other areas or information that is not yet covered here to become important in the future. So for the analysis, then we wanted to know which surveys exactly cover the topic already, which constructs are used to cover the topic in the questionnaire, if there have been a more general coverage of the topic, or especially in relation to crisis and disasters, and if the topics have been covered only once or repeatedly in a longitudinal sense. Yeah, so we did this analysis of long-term surveys. You can see that we have analyzed the surveys that are shown here on the right side. We applied some criteria for selecting these surveys. First, they have to conduct microdata that reflect the living conditions, attitudes, or behaviors of individual actors. The surveys all used high-quality probability samples so that external validity can be guaranteed. We want to include only surveys that collect longitudinal data, so panel studies, for example, that ask the same person over a long run again and again, so that you can also assess developments and changes over time regarding attitudes and behaviors, for example. And the fourth criteria has been that the data is georeferenced. That means that you can link the survey data via a geocode with regional information, because that's important also, especially for crises which tend to have a highly regional focus, such as natural disasters. So yeah, we wanted to make a rather broad analysis of surveys that cover different levels of actors. So some surveys ask individuals, others households, and others companies or businesses in their surveys. And they also focus on different subpopulations. So we have, for example, here the survey of health, aging, and retirement in Europe, SHARE, which is one of the biggest social science surveys, only ask people who are older than 50 years, if I'm not wrong. Or, for example, the DECIM panel has a focus on migrants. And yeah, so they cover different subpopulations and different topics. Such, for example, the German longitudinal environmental study focus on climate and environment. And yeah, by this we could cover different types of crises also maybe, and how they affect different groups differently. So maybe some of our main findings in regarding this analysis. So we could see that almost all of the identified topics were somehow covered by the analyzed surveys, albeit to very different degrees. There have been various and more detailed information on prolonged crises, such as the coronavirus pandemic, but less information relating to event-based disasters, such as floods, for example, that may not affect the entire German population. So yeah, that's been main insight. Then we had some areas, for example, information behavior, where there were mainly only general questions and no relation to crises and disasters at all. Regarding trust in institutions and voluntary engagement, these were covered by many surveys. However, the organizations relevant to crisis management were often missing in there as an option to choose from. So these respective items could be added maybe in the future. And there have been various information on larger vulnerable groups, for example, migrants or elderly population or single parents, but less information on more marginal subgroups. So indicators if one person is homeless or drug addicts or a person without rights of residence are not covered by these surveys. Afterwards, there have been some indicators for resilience. So, for example, for individual resilience, that includes psychological constructs, such as personality attributes, locus of control or self-efficacy, and some indicators of collective resilience, for example, mutual trust, sense of social belonging, social networks, or local attachment. And a last finding has been that there has been almost no longitudinal information on emergency preparedness. So yeah, that has been maybe the biggest gap that we identified in the analysis, and that we also used as a main focus in our next step, which was been the development and placement of additional modules. So we want to focus on personal preparedness for crisis and disasters on the one hand, and also crisis resilience of companies, which we have detected as the most important needs at the moment. And yeah, in order to bring these topics towards into the surveys, first, we facilitated an exchange between experts from the BBK in the survey programs. And together, we also looked at what surveys already exists that cover these topics. So we had, for example, one special survey of the socioeconomic panel, together with some linked employee data, which focused on resilience of German companies. So some questions which have been used there, we could then use in the development of our additional modules. And so together we developed some questions, of course, always taking into account the particular requirements of the surveys. So there's always the problem that you have very limited time, so you cannot ask too many questions. Usually they have to be very short. But however, we in two cases we were successful, or everyone was successful, that two new models were placed. So we had the ERB establishment panel. So that's the Research Institute of the Federal Employment Agency, which every year conducts a Betriebspanel survey. And there, from this year onwards, there is a new module on the preparedness of companies and organizations, and also on the maintenance of business operations in the event of a power cut. You can see the questions here. And the second module that has been developed got into the German longitudinal and environmental study. That's also a panel study focusing on environment and climate, and they have also included in their wave of this year a module on personal preparedness. And here can you see, for example, that we used, or they used here, the recommendations of the BBK, for example, regarding the minimum of days that you should provide some food or drinking water in your house to be prepared for disasters. Okay, so that what was the process of inclusion of crisis-related content into survey studies. So quickly, maybe to conclude, I will get into our third working package, which is to facilitate networking or coordination structures. As I already said, we organize the regular meetings of our RatSWD working group to bring always the topic of crisis and disaster related data also into the RatSWD. Yeah, we conducted expert interviews and also meetings with researchers and practitioners, and who are experts in crisis management or crisis research. We conducted 2 larger exchange meetings where we brought different stakeholders together in order to exchange experiences and best practices. And out of these exchange meetings, we formatted a standby group of relevant actors. So yeah, as I just said already, representatives of both research, data infrastructure, and practical civil protection. And yeah, after having formatted the standby group, we want to now, in the next step, establish our coordination center at the RatSWD office, which in a case of emergency or in the next crisis could activate this standby group and organize quickly a meeting so that these stakeholders can then discuss how to respond in towards to this new crisis regarding access to data or coordination for new surveys that has to be conducted to facilitate the access to social science data also for political actors in this immediate situation of crisis. Yeah, maybe to conclude a bit more again of a summary what I've talked about today. So it's pretty clear that more and unprecedented crises are likely to come in the future. In these situations, there's a growing need on information on society and then thereby also social science data. To make sure that policy decisions can be made and based on evidence. So we must improve the access to these data and also the possibilities of linking data or social science data with other data types. And we must enhance exchange and coordination between different stakeholders. Yeah, in order to do so, in the scope of the project, we want to continuously monitor developments, what's happening in politics and research infrastructures regarding crisis and disasters. We want to expand and improve our information platform, also with this evaluation process that I just mentioned. We want to look which possibilities are there for automation of the collection of resources and also a further integration into the National Research Data Infrastructure, NFDI. The network that we have developed in the last months should be consolidated and maybe also expanded. And we want to establish this coordination center to be able to give rapid responses in societal crises. Okay, that's from my side. Thank you for your attention. And I'm happy and looking forward towards the discussion and questions. Thank you.
now. Okay, thank you very much.